I read 13 books in the month of October. Figures. Hi guys, my name is Ezra and welcome back to my channel. So, I really had high hopes for October, but I ended up just reading 13 books, which is okay. It's again the average for what I've been reading in the last few months. So I'm actually not disappointed, but I ended with 13 for the month of October. So 13 is a bad number, unlucky number, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to do my wrap up today and I'm going to share a few of my stats. So I did join 3 challenges last month and I did pretty good. I wouldn't say great, but it's not bad. Let's just say it's not bad, considering that I normally only read 1 book for a challenge. But for the last challenge, I will not be sharing any updates yet. The PNR readathon starts today. Well, it started yesterday, so I don't really have anything to update you guys except for reading 1 book in that challenge. So I'm gonna start with the stats. So for the month of October, I said I read 13 books. I'm gonna go over all the 13 books that I read in a short review of my thoughts on the books that I read. So in total, I've read 80 books, and that's from the month of January to current. And I'm really happy with the number of books that I've read. I intentionally set my goal for this year for 12 books because I didn't want to be stressed out trying to catch up with my actual book goals. So I wanted this to be a stress-free reading year. I actually started that last year. I think last year I put in 10 as my goal, which I met in like month 1. Obviously, I knew going in that I would read more than 12 books. However, I do get a little bit anxious if I don't meet my goal. I think that happened in 2017, which I did meet my goal, but I think I was scrambling like in the last 3 months of the year to read more. So I didn't want that to happen. I wanted my reading to be pleasurable, well, as pleasurable as possible, because I love to read, and I know that I would read more books. Obviously not as many as other readers, but I'm still happy with the 80 books that I read. So out of the 80 books that I read, I actually reread 17 of those books. Actually 18, because I reread Grip twice, and Goodreads only counts it as on the shelves. They only count it as ones for the reread. So I do have a reread shelf for 2020, and I did reread Grip twice this year. It's one of my favorites. Out of the 80 books, I also DNF'd 7, which is not bad considering I do DNF books pretty quickly. However, I would say that I actually DNF'd 3 books in October. So I don't know what that says. Maybe I picked the wrong books to read for October, but 7 is still not a bad number. I'm happy that I'm able to finish the book even though I didn't like it. Also, out of the 80, 13 are 5 stars. So I'm counting it 13 because I read Grip twice. So I'm counting my rereads as 5-star reads. I do count rereads, if they're still 5 stars, I do still count them under 5-star reads, which I think is okay because I do change my rating, as evidenced by what I'm going to talk about later, because I did reread a book that I changed the star rating. So I do change the rating on rereads, especially if I really didn't like it on the second reread. So let's move on to my actual stats for October. Now, I did say that I read 13 books in October. So out of the 13, 11 of the books were audiobooks, and one was an e-arc and one was an ebook. So let's go on. Let's move on to the challenges. So I said I participated in 3 challenges just for the month of October, and I actually did pretty well. But I will only update you with 2 of the challenges. The first challenge was October, which was hosted by Kim at Kimberly Faye Reads, and I actually ended up reading 7 of the arcs. That was pretty great. 7 arcs in a month, yeah. I would say that was great, especially since these arcs are actually published already, and I believe out of the 7, only 1 was an actual e-arc. Everything else I actually was able to borrow the audiobook from the library. So thank God for Hoopla, because some of the audiobooks that I got were available right away on Hoopla. All right, so for the Fall for Joanna Shupe challenge, I didn't really do that great. I only read 3 of the books. However, I've read 11 books in total that Joanna Shupe wrote, and that includes 2 of her novellas, or 3 of her novellas. For the Fall for Joanna Shupe buddy reads or group read, I only read 1 book because I already read Tycoon, and I actually discovered that I've read Mogul, and I actually rated it low, and I actually reviewed it. So I was thinking that because I rated it low, I didn't really want to read it again. And I already read Baron, and which I gave 5 stars too. I think I wanted to reread Baron, but Mogul was the only one on audio. All the other books were not on audio, so I was struggling to read, so I just decided to let it go. The third challenge that I participated is the PNR Readathon, which I won't be updating you today because the readathon is not over yet, and I've only read 1 book for the readathon, so I will be updating you later, well, for next month. Now let's get on to the books, because I have 2 5-star reads out of the 13 books and 3 DNFs. So 5-star read number 1 is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I started reading it in late September, and I actually finished it in October 2nd, and I love it so much. It's an age gap romance. It's an age gap taboo romance. Now, the reason I picked this up was because I asked my reader friends on Instagram to recommend age gap romances to me. I actually ended up reading 2 books, age gap books, but the other book I read last month, and Birthday Girl I finished in October, so it was not included in my September wrap up. Now, the main reason why I was reading age gap romance is because I'm in an age gap relationship. My husband is older than me, and it was his birthday in September, and I was like, hey, maybe I should read an age gap romance. So I was very apprehensive starting Birthday Girl because it is taboo. So the heroine, she actually falls in love with her boyfriend's dad, and it is taboo. The hero is a little bit older, but not. I think that hero is in his 30s, I think mid-30s, because he had a child really young. The heroine is 18. The heroine is 18 or 19 years old, and she's the same age as his son. So it was a pleasant surprise. I absolutely love it. I think the main issue that happened here in this book is that she's just, younger. He is about almost twice her age. And another main reason that I did like Birthday Girl is that because I'm in an age gap relationship, my husband is 9 years older than me, and I was fairly young when I met him. I was 19 as well. So the heroine, I forgot her name. I'm sorry, I forgot her name. But the heroine's feelings and thoughts and the conflict going through her mind when she was dating, you know, when she developed feelings to, oh, I also forgot his name, Pike. When she developed feelings for Pike, I kind of felt it. That was my dilemma when I was in a relationship with my husband. So when we were still dating way back when. So yeah, and that's why I gave it 5 stars. Slow burn, but still very steamy, and I highly recommend it. If you have been thinking about reading this book, pick it up. It's absolutely great. I do recommend the audiobook. It is in 2 POVs, but I believe majority of the POV is the heroine's, and Pike does get his own POV every few chapters, which I think was okay. And I did like the dual POV because I liked Pike's thoughts going into the relationship, and it kind of made me feel like it was okay for them to be in a relationship. The next book that I read is Secret Crush Seduction by J.C. Lee. This was a finished copy that I received from Harlequin, and I actually started reading the physical copy, but I ended up picking up the audiobook and I didn't like it. I was able to finish it. I talked about this book while I was discussing the October challenges video, so I'll probably link that in the description box below, or if not, you can visit my channel to read my thoughts on this book. But I didn't like it. I ended up giving it 2 stars. Yeah, and it's one of my anticipated reads for 2020 as well. So not sure if I'll continue on the series. This is the second book in the Heirs of Hansel series, so I'm not sure if I will be reading the third book. So the third book that I read was Magnate by Joanna Shupe, which was an e-arc that I received years ago. So this was part of the October challenge, and I talked extensively about this one when I discussed my October challenges video. But I ended up picking the audiobook for this one because I love audiobooks. So I ended up loving this book so much. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know why I didn't read it when I received the arc, but that's fine because now I read it and I gave it 4 stars. So I'm so happy about it. Then the next book that I picked up for no other reason than I kept seeing her latest release, Follow Me Darkly, on Instagram, and I was intrigued. I saw a lot of Bookstagrammers get like a nice kit, like a themed kit for her release. So since I haven't read her before, I decided to get the audiobook, which was free on Audible Escape. And I picked Unchained Blood Bond Saga Volume 1. So I believe these are a set of novellas, and for this audiobook they basically grouped 3 of the novellas. And I remember years ago when indie authors loved releasing shorter novellas that ended in cliffhangers, and which made you want to read the next book in the series. So I think I don't like that format. I don't like that strategy. I understand that you guys want to make money, but I think it's a cop-out because I honestly think that some of those books could be condensed in one. You know, I understand people do duologies. I understand people do trilogies, which is fine. So this one felt like a serial. So I didn't like it. I mean, I don't like that type of format because it just I don't know. So anyway, I did read Unchained Blood Bond Saga. This is by Helen Hart. I think I forgot to mention that, Helen Hart. The audiobook actually follows the format of the, you know, the novella. So when I was listening to the audiobook, it actually ended, and then book two book two started. So it kind of took me out of the story. I didn't really feel anything between the hero and the heroine, so I DNF'd it after maybe 30 minutes into book two. So it was still okay, but I don't know if I will be reading reading other books by Helen Hart. Maybe if you tell me Follow Me Darkly is good, I'll read that, but for now I'm not going to pick up any of her books. So the next book that I picked up was A Daring Arrangement by Joanna Shupe, and this one was also an e-arc that I received years ago. So this is part of my October challenge, and I was able to get the audiobook for this one since this one was published by Avon. This is the first book in the 400 series, and unfortunately I DNF'd it. I really knew that I would be DNFing it because the first time I read it on ebook, well, the e-arc, I did not really continue after like a couple of pages because I just didn't like Julius and I didn't like the heroine. And I did go over into more detail about this when I talked about my October challenges. So if you're interested to hear my thoughts on this book, you can go ahead and watch that video as well. But anyway, I ended up DNFing this. Even with the audiobook, I did progress a little bit further into the romance or into the story, but I still didn't like it. Then the next book that I read is Prisoner of My Desire by Joanna Lindsey. This is actually a reread for me. I think the last time I reread this book was in 2016 or 15. I can't remember, but it was years ago, and I wanted to pick this up because I'm planning to do a series on this channel about plots with similar plots, books with very similar plots, and this is one that I wanted to pick up because I also remember another book with a very similar plot to Joanna Lindsey's Prisoner of My Desire. Unfortunately, I finished this book and I absolutely did not like it. I gave it 2 stars. I know that I gave this 4 stars when I first read it. I remember reading this book and I remember loving this book. I think I read this in college, either high school or college, or I kept rereading this book. But a lot of authors, actually a lot of historical romance authors, talk about this book and talk about how amazing this book is. And some of the authors actually, I think they said one of their gateway authors was Joanna Lindsey, and you can really tell that this is really dated. This was published in 1991. So I'm not going to go into detail with my thoughts on this book because I will be talking about it in a future video. All right, the next book is A Scandalous Deal by Joanna Shupe. I also talked a lot about this book in the October challenges video, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I love this book so much, and this is the second book in the 400 series, so I'm happy that at least after the 2 DNFs and 1 2-star read, I ended up reading a book that I absolutely enjoyed. So I'm so happy that I did decide to pick up A Scandalous Deal, and I really love it. I really love this book. The next book is another of my 5-star read this month. I only have 2 5-star reads this month, and I'm so happy that I decided to pick up Whiteout by Adriana Anders. That is really a mouthful to say, but Whiteout is really great. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. It is a close proximity trope, and it is a romantic suspense. I also talked about this in the October challenges video, so you can go ahead and watch that as well. But I really like this. This is a romantic suspense, close proximity romance, and it really had me at the edge of my seat. If you haven't read this book, yes, you should pick it up. This book does end in a cliffhanger, but there is an HEA in the end. I think the story is perfectly wrapped up really well. I haven't read the plot for the second book in the series. I should read that because I want to know if it's the same couple or if it's a different couple. But I am still happy that I read this book because this was also part of my Arctober challenge. And I actually forgot that I requested an arc for this book. But in the end, I love this so much. This is the sunshine heroine, grumpy hero trope as well. So highly recommend this book. So the next book that I read was A Rake's Guide to Seduction by Caroline Linden. And again, I also spoke about this book in the October challenges video. I actually ended up DNFing this book. This book is actually a re-release of a 2008 release. So it was re-released, I think, in 2017. And you can really tell that it's really dated. I think in my quick Goodreads review, I said that there was a lot of telling. So the heroine actually ends up marrying someone else. She thinks that she loves this guy, but actually this guy doesn't really care for her, and takes her to his ancestral manor where his ailing father lives. So I think the ailing father is the earl and her husband is the heir. And because the line ends with her husband, the earl was really controlling and would not allow them to leave the ancestral estate. So she basically is stuck in, I think it was in the country, I don't know, Scotland or something, but she was in the country. She was stuck there for 4 years until her husband passes away. However, those 4 years are actually a chapter in the book, and it is basically told to us in a journal format. And I listened to the audiobook for this one, and it was really boring. I did feel her feelings from being so happy, being such a bubbly person, and then slowly the light is taken out of her soul because of what her husband did to her. But I didn't like it, again, because it was kind of told to us. I think it would have worked well if the book started during the time when she returned to London, and then we would get flashbacks of what happened 4 years prior. But it did not happen, so I ended up DNFing it after maybe, I think it was chapter 3 or 4. I can't remember, but I didn't really like it. And again, you can tell that it was a 2008 release because it did feel a little bit dated, and I don't think it was refreshed for when it was re-released. Let's move on to the next book, which was an e-arc that I received. And it was Stroke of Midnight by K. Webster. So this is my first K. Webster book, and I already knew that K. Webster does write taboo romance, so I kind of knew that going in. I did not expect anything with this book. I did expect it to be erotic romance, and yes, it was. It's actually pretty well written, and I ended up giving these 2 stars because I didn't really like the hero. He was an alpha hole. This book does have BDSM humiliation. I was not comfortable with the humiliation piece, even though there was aftercare after the fact. But I mean, he was already an alpha hole. So if you add humiliation, he wanted to humiliate the heroine while they were having sex. So it is a retelling, well, it's a twist retelling of the Cinderella trope. Then, because I was just reading a lot of not really great books, I decided to reread one of my favorites from last year, and it was On Dublin Street by Samantha Young. And I am so happy to report that it is still a 5-star read for me. I did not include this in the list for 5 stars just for this month because it's a reread, but I'm still happy to report that yes, it is still 5 stars. I was still emotional. Jocelyn and Brayden are amazing together. I love how even though Brayden was a little bit of an alpha, he was really in tune to Joss's feelings. So Joss here is the one that goes hot and cold in like a space of a minute, and she's the one who doesn't want commitment. So I love it. Brayden is sweet. He is a little bit older and he does have a younger sister, so I think that's why he was really understanding, I guess, or why he could kind of get Jocelyn. But I really like it. It's emotional. There is trigger warnings here. Jocelyn is well, we know this is revealed in like the prologue of the book, that Jocelyn's family, her mom, dad, and her younger sister actually gets killed in a car crash when she was 14. We get a little bit of flashbacks from what happened to her before, and she actually, in this book, she actually goes to see a psychiatrist, or no, a psychologist. She actually goes to see a psychologist. Her conversations between her and her psychologist is interspersed, I think, every few chapters, or anytime there's like an important event that happens, there is a short chat with her psychologist, and I really like it. I thought that those touches were perfect. But anyway, still 5 stars. I did pick up the novella that follows after this book, and it's called Under Fountain Bridge. Still by Samantha Young. I actually purchased the audiobook for this one, but this was a novella, and this is Ellie and Adam's romance. Ellie is Brayden's younger sister, and Adam is Brayden's best friend. That is one of my favorite tropes, but this book really disappointed me. I didn't like it. I ended up DNFing it. I don't really do this, but I think I'm going to be returning the audiobook because I purchased it for 1 credit, and this book is only 3.5 hours long. So I think, and plus I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. So I'm sorry. I will probably return it. I just want to be honest, because it's really not great. This is actually Ellie and Adam's book, as I've said, and this happens right after the end of the chapter on Dublin Street, but before the epilogue of In Dublin Street. And Ellie and Adam finally moved in together, and Ellie is going through her stuff, and she finds her old journals, and I didn't like the format because she was reading her journals from when she kind of crushed on Adam. So I think there was like 10, and there was like 14, and when she was 18, and I stopped when she was 18. So I didn't really like it. She was reading from her journal, and then it sort of flashes back to the time before, and I didn't really like it. I thought it was gonna be different, and since it was like 3 hours, I stopped at like 1.5, like halfway through it, and there was nothing really happening, and I really wanted to find out how Ellie and Adam hooked up. Maybe she wrote that in a diary, but I don't know. I was really listening to it. I just couldn't go through with it. The narrator is actually pretty great, but I didn't like it, to be honest. So DNF, that's my last DNF for the month of October. Then the very last book that I actually finished this morning, or maybe around noonish, was The Power of Hades by Eliza Rain and Rose Wilson. So this book is actually part of the PNR Readathon. This is the group read, and I decided to get the audiobook instead of reading the ebook because I prefer audiobooks, as I've said. And I thought it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. The book does end, the book does end in a cliffhanger because it is a trilogy. So there is no HEA yet. There are twists. There is a plot twist, and it is slowly revealed why they picked Persephone. So Persephone is actually human. She's from New York, present day New York, and she gets kidnapped by Zeus, and Zeus takes her to the underworld to participate in the Queen of the Underworld competition. So basically it's like the Bachelorette, the Bachelor Hunger Games version. There is a revelation about who Persephone is, and so again, this book kind of assumes that you are very familiar of the gods and goddesses, basically Greek mythology. When the gods and goddesses are introduced to you, they don't really give you a little bit of a backstory about them. It feels like this book expects you to already know that going in. So I thought it was okay. Not something that I absolutely loved. I'm not sure if I will read the second or the third book. So those were the books that I read for the month of October. And thank you for making it this far into the video. If you've read any of the books that I read, please let me know what your thoughts are. I really love to discuss the books with you, and it doesn't matter if you love it or if you hate it. I still want to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in another video.